Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Let's just wait a couple of seconds. Some people are still coming in. How are you doing, Ashley?
Great. How are you?
Good, good. I think, let me just ask how many people right now we have. All right, the numbers are going up a bit. Hi, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending where on the world you are. I'm currently in Florence, Italy. Ashley, what about you?
I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
So presenting from all over the world. Thanks for joining our webinar today that we're going to look at the impact that the Olympic Games will have on the city of Paris and kind of the state of tourism this summer. So I'm Hannah Babineau. I am the head of partnerships at Data Appeal, and we are a data provider specializing in geospatial and points of interest data, enriching that with sentiment to support tourism destinations. And I'm joined by our partners at PredictHQ.
Thanks. Hi, Hannah. I'm Ashley, and I'm a customer experience manager here at PredictHQ, and we are the largest and smartest event data stream. We track 19 different event categories across 4 types of events.
Great, perfect. So before we get started, Ashley and I have a question for everyone. We're going to bring up a poll here, and we want to hear from everyone. So let us know what your favorite summer Olympic sport is. Ashley, what's yours?
Probably gymnastics.
Gymnastics.
What about you?
All right, mine's probably swimming. Swimming or water polo.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good choices.
We'll see. No. So let us know, everyone. Kind of feel free to select one. All right, while the votes are coming in. I love that breakdancing is a sport this year. Curious to see what the attendees will be like for that.
Yeah, I was just actually looking at the attendance figures for that because I was so interested. I think it's a new category this year, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, what a cool addition.
exactly. All right, can we see the results? All right. They're quite mixed. Right now we're seeing football, soccer, depending where in the world you are. Don't come at us. We're seeing about one-fourth, so 25% have selected that, 10% at gymnastics, 38% at swimming, 14 at tennis, 5 for breaking or breakdancing, 5 also for skateboarding, none for water polo, 5% for badminton, and none for the biathlon, triathlon. So interesting mix. Also, I think quite representative of the geographies and the attendees that we have here today.
Yeah, definitely.
So perfect. Let's kind of jump into it. And please, if anyone has any questions, there is the Q&A, so feel free to ask. And my colleague Margarita will manage and alert me when there's some questions that pop up. So we kind of wanted to get started by understanding what is the situation right now in Paris. And it's quite crazy, especially when it comes to prices. And I think it's something that we kind of expected last year, but the sticker shock is quite insane. So we wanted to start with this quote from the mayor of Paris, looking at tourism, who said that they want popular games, but they can't have games where someone is paying over 700 euros a night. So what we're finding are visitors are actually planning their stay outside of the city to commute by train from surrounding areas like Nantes, Lille, Rennes, and willing to do that commute instead of kind of paying these exorbitant prices while staying in the city. So today we're going to look at a few different kind of aspects to the Olympics itself. On the data appeal side, we'll focus on data collected from our all-in-one destination analysis platform, looking at a variety of hotel prices, occupancy rates, as well as points of interest, sentiment scores, and also some data coming from air flows, air traffic to understand kind of booking windows and where the visitors will come from. And Ashley, if you want to kind of mention what you'll be looking at.
Yeah. We're really going to look at the figures, the top events, and we'll talk about demand impact. We'll talk about some trends you'll see as well.
Perfect. So we want to share just kind of the the most kind of interesting stats that we're finding right now. Currently, the average price for both accommodation properties and short-term rentals is 300% more right now than they were last time at this time last year. The average price for a short-term rental is 751 euros, while accommodation properties are a little bit higher at 771. Also, this data was collected last week on February 20th, so certainly things are definitely changing, and that's kind of the beauty of this real-time dynamic data. Meanwhile, on the PredictHQ side, we're seeing right now a total of 12 million predicted attendees, and over the crazy number, $946 million for total spending. Half of that is attributed for accommodation. So again, this hospitality industry, hotels, short-term rentals at 496 million. So we'll kind of explore a couple different topics. Again, as we mentioned, different trends in hotel prices, short-term rentals, how far in advance travelers are booking, where they'll be coming in from, and then also once they're in the city of Paris, where are they going? So aside from the sporting events, kind of what attractions they'll likely attend, which restaurants they'll go out to, and on the event side, what are these kind of predicted attendees and the predicted spending per event?
So this map represents the events in their respective venues where we can expect to see a lot of that demand. In the top left corner, you can see some of the other events that are happening outside, out of Paris, like Marseille, which a lot of the soccer events, football, will be occurring. You want to go to the next slide. So, you know, the Olympics are gearing up to be a massive event. As Hannah mentioned, we're predicting 12 million people will be attending the Summer Olympics overall. You can see in the top right-hand corner that we have our predicted attendance, which we calculate with machine learning models and expert systems in our pipeline. Some of the features that we use to predict sporting events are things like venue capacity, type, and duration of sport, stage of tournament, teams playing, as well as some other features. You also see PHQ rank and local rank in the top right-hand corner as well. Both are listed at 100. PHQ rank is our general rank that represents impact and is based on estimated attendance, and local rank is based off of estimated attendance relative to local population density and other factors. So needless to say, the Olympics will have a massive impact on Paris's economy. As Hannah mentioned, the predicted spend in total is over 946 million. And this is our dollar figure estimated for the impact on the local businesses. We break it down for a figure for accommodation, transportation, and restaurants. As Hannah mentioned, 496 billion is going to be attributed to accommodation. And to calculate predicted event spend, we look at factors like our verified event data, global, macro, and micro economic indicators, and other features. In a later slide, we'll dive into the top events that'll drive a large portion of this spend. So before we get into the top events, can anybody take a guess on which sporting event will be the most attended?
If I had to guess, based on the votes, I would say soccer, but I don't know. I know the Netflix just kind of launched their Champions League for rugby, so it might also be rugby.
Yeah,
all right. We're seeing the
definitely
vote
good guesses.
come in. So far, we have about 70% of the votes. Okay. All right. So right now we have athletics at 65%, football/soccer 17, handball 4, rugby 13, and tennis 4. So athletics right now is the top vote.
Should we tell them?
We should.
Okay. If you chose football, you would be correct. We are predicting that football will have the greatest predicted attendance of all of the sports at the Summer Olympics. No surprise here. The opening and closing ceremonies are going to be the two largest events at the Summer Olympics. It's just a few call outs. You can see we're predicting 300,000 people will be attending the opening ceremony, and over 81,000 will be attending the closing ceremony. As we mentioned, football will be the sporting event with the highest predicted attendance across the board. So Hannah, I have a question for you. can you guess which other two sports are projected to have the highest attendance at the Summer Olympics?
Personally, I'd say rugby, since stadium wise, probably they're quite similar. And then maybe also athletics.
Those are good guesses. It's actually basketball and handball. Those were the other two that we're predicting will have the highest predicted attendance in addition to football. Good
Wow,
guesses.
shocked about handball. Do you have any insight why that is?
I think a lot of it is tied to the venue capacity. I think actually you and I were talking about the different, I think France actually has won a lot of different handball tournaments. So I'm sure the turnout might have something to do with that as well. But I think a lot of it is related to the attendance figures that we're seeing.
Definitely, yeah. I think if I remember correctly, they might have won maybe 3 gold medals in the last 10, 15 years. So probably a nationwide kind of fashion for that sport, but super interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So I like to include this slide because it's really important when we're talking about event data that we talk about the importance of the dynamic nature of it. So you may have seen that in the news, the French government actually halved the number of spectators allowed to attend the opening ceremony. So it went from 600,000 to 300,000. And we updated this within our system shortly after the announcement to accurately reflect those attendance figures. We also updated, as you'll see, predicted spend as well, since having the number of attendees is undoubtedly going to affect demand. So something that's important is event data needs constant maintenance since it is so dynamic and is constantly changing. And we actually update 80% of events after they're first logged. So just an interesting tidbit. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about demand and how this will impact accommodation rates in Paris during the Olympics. So this is our demand impact patterns, which is a feature that helps to better anticipate and plan for fluctuations in demand by flagging leading and lagging days, which are the days before and after an event occurs. So as you can see here, there's about a 5-day ramp up before the Olympics officially begin, with a fairly quick drop off at the conclusion of the Olympics. So what does this mean for you? Not all attendance is created equally. So knowing the leading and lagging days before and after event gives you a fuller picture of expected demand so you can plan your operations, labor, and inventory accordingly. Now I'll pass it to Hannah to speak more about how this demand is expected to impact accommodation rates.
Definitely. It's super interesting. I think the graphs are almost kind of mirroring each other. This one here is looking at the current average prices for accommodation properties. So this is combining both short-term rentals with kind of that traditional accommodation. So hotels, B&Bs, resorts, etc. As you can see, we were saying it almost kind of looks like the Outback. So it's pretty consistent throughout the spring. This graph right here is showing from the 1st of July until the end of August. So just a 2-month period. For that opening ceremony, things spike quite considerably. Right now, we're seeing the average price for an accommodation at 848 euros per night. Again, just average price. We'll look at the maximum prices in just a second. You can see this does have a little bit of a drop off, as Ashley was mentioning, kind of those lagging days, kind of once a lot of people are going for that ceremony and then probably either traveling, continuing their travels in France after. And not everyone will be staying that full kind of 3-week period. There's some other spikes kind of again in that middle. And then again, things really just drop off kind of once the Olympics end as well. Not many lagging days once that closing ceremony happens. You can see here also the saturation. So that's Data Appeals KPI that looks at essentially the occupancy coming from these OTAs. So the online travel agencies, Booking.com, Expedia, Priceline, so all these kind of intermediary channels where people can book from. You can still see they're quite low still. On that opening ceremony, we're only at 6.4% right now, which is still showing that there's a lot of bookings that have not happened. There's still a lot of capacity for people to continue to make their bookings. I think it's quite sticker shock right now is what we're seeing. A lot of people are a bit hesitant to make that reservation just because in hopes that prices might settle down as we get closer to the games. Meanwhile, here where you can look at the minimum and the maximum prices, even the minimum price for that opening ceremony is still over 500 euros per night, which again is quite a big investment, especially if someone is making a long haul travel overseas or even within Europe. Maximum prices right now are almost at 1,700, which blows my mind, since that's, you know, we were joking yesterday, that's rent for a lot of people, a monthly rent. Also probably more than monthly rent for a lot of these cities. So the price ranges are really fluctuating huge, especially those kind of 3 to 4 days lagging of that opening ceremony. So it's interesting to know also that the opening ceremony has a much bigger impact than the medal ceremonies. So more people want to see essentially that opening when people come in, and less so when they award the gold, silver, and bronze medals. Lastly, here we're looking at that comparison between this year and last year at the same time period. And as I mentioned earlier, it's 300% more right now than it was last year at this time. And right now it's only February, so it's possible that prices will still get up the closer we get. It's just interesting to see. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on and update everyone once we get a little bit closer to July. Then kind of moving on from the demand, looking kind of at the who's who. So who's expected to come in. Right now, the US market is definitely leading the way. We can see for that week of July 22nd, so that week of the opening ceremony, there's quite a considerable amount of arrivals coming in. 6,000 are already expected to arrive, coming from GDS data, so that's the global distribution system, with the US market leading. Interestingly, also France comes in second, so that domestic market, so people flying in from Marseille, from Nice, from Lyon, so kind of intra-French travel, followed also by the Canadian market, South Korea, and Japan. So those are definitely the top markets coming in. Also interesting to see, again, a lot of these are these long haul markets, so how long do they plan to stay? So right now we can see on the right-hand side, the US market is kind of that average length is that sweet spot between 1 and 2 weeks, between 8 and 13 nights. Meanwhile, I think it's interesting to note the Australian market has a much bigger impact on the local economy, since they're planning to stay between 16 and 30 nights is that kind of the majority. And also about 20% is planning to stay longer than a month. So lots of people coming in and planning to spend their summer holidays, or for them, it would be winter holidays coming into France, and Paris for the summer. Also interesting to note the booking windows. So this is how many days in advance that the source market is making their booking before they arrive to the destination. You can see in this case, they're all about 7 to 8 months in advance before the July period. So these were made long before New Year's Eve and kind of October timeframe, probably when prices were pretty stable and kind of those early peaks that they were about to spike. So it's interesting, all the source markets, even within Europe, so countries like Italy, also within France, but then also kind of outside that European market. So both North and South America, as well as Asia and that APAC. You can see there's a big difference between this year versus last year. For example, last year, the US booking window for the month of July was 91 days, so 3 months in advance, which is quite typical that we see over the last 5-10 years, especially when comparing to this year at 227 days. And you can see the various countries, even kind of within France, they've gone from just over a month as an average booking window, again, to 7 months. Here we also have some information coming on the search side. So searches right now for France this summer are just about 10 million searches coming in to the 3 major airports in Paris, with an average window of 231 days, with an average length of stay of 12.3 days. So again, the target market is still the US. Interesting to note though, for the search side, the second market is actually coming in from the UK. So right now they're doing a lot of searches, but not pulling the trigger just yet to make their booking. Also, some other emerging markets are popping up, and in this case, also Spain and China are making quite a few searches, but still holding back a bit on that bookings. And kind of looking at the typology, so how are these people traveling? 30% are looking to travel as a couple, so 2 travelers, 24 actually solo travelers, 15 are in groups of 4. So interesting to also kind of see those dynamics. So kind of taking a step back from the data, Ashley and I really just want to talk about what can you do with this information? So I'll hand it to you, Ashley.
Yeah. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you're optimizing your operation, staffing, and inventory. We'll talk about it in a later slide, but we are seeing such historic levels of spend coming to Paris. So really making sure that you have everything ready to go just to manage the fluctuation or the influx of people that we're going to see.
Definitely. I think it can really range in the gamut from security, police, of course, kind of security is a big topic right now, especially in France with the 2 kind of major wars going on. But then also kind of more smaller things that you might not think of, like facilities, public restrooms, public water fountains, first aid. These are all kind of things that the city needs to keep in mind. And then also kind of based on that map we were looking at before, where in the city everyone will be distributed. And again, that's where I think the predicted number of attendees can really be helpful, because understanding those sporting events that have the biggest draw, that's where you need to put kind of the majority of the resources. Also kind of looking at infrastructure. So again, are there enough accommodation properties in the city, or should kind of these neighboring communities, whether it's a city kind of in the suburbs of the Ile-de-France, the region, or going out a bit into Nantes or going into Lille, Lyon, Dijon. So some of these communities trying to optimize, maybe, stay with us, you can spend a little bit less money, explore a part that's not as filled with over tourism, and facilitate those train rides into the city each day. And then kind of the third use case is for marketing purposes. So when you're creating these campaigns to the source markets, you can create the right message at the right time, especially when looking at these booking windows. If you know and you want to create a campaign to a specific long haul market, it makes sense to make that campaign between that search and booking phase, which understanding these insights really kind of gives you this information and the insights to create that campaign at the right time. So kind of, yeah. Switching gears a bit, we can now talk about spending and sentiment.
Perfect. I think it's really interesting that while demand and predicted spend are, of course, increasing, the sentiment score is remaining high as well. So I'm going to delve deeper into obviously predicted event spend, but I do think it's an interesting connection to see that the appreciation and the optimism that we're seeing for the Olympics stays high, even though demand is definitely peaking as well. Going back to earlier conversations, I think this graph looks similar to the demand impact, and it kind of follows the same trends that we're seeing. But you can really, I like this graph because you can really see the magnitude that the Olympics will have on local businesses in Paris. So the pink line obviously represents total spend. The green line is accommodation, purple is restaurants, and dark blue is transportation. So we will see a slight increase in predicted event spend at just under 5 million in the beginning of July. Most of this spend is due to expos scheduled to occur at that time in Paris. But really none of the spend at the beginning of July or the end of August even compares to the predicted spend that we're going to see around the Olympics. To correlate to the events that are planned to occur, we'll see a sharp increase in predicted event spend around the opening ceremony on the 26th, and then we'll see peaks and valleys correlating to the number of events set to occur. We do see peaks at above 34 million daily for accommodation spend on July 27th, August 3rd, and August 10th. Accommodation businesses and tourism destinations can use predicted event spend, especially the surge we can expect from the Olympics, to proactively price room rates with respect to the increase in demand. So now I'll pass it to Hannah, who's going to discuss the rising sentiment score.
Definitely. So I think it's always kind of interesting to see the correlation between spending and sentiment. Here, what we've done is essentially mapped all the points of interest in the city of Paris. So what we mean by a point of interest, or a POI, is essentially anything with a physical presence. So for food and beverage, that could be a traditional restaurant, but also places like fast food, kiosks, cafes, etc. Same within hospitality. Again, it's not just a traditional hotel. It could also be a bed and breakfast, a motel, a resort, etc. Same attractions, of course, can what we think of attraction is typically a museum or a place of art, culture, something like that, but it's also public parks, aquariums, etc. Places that these people are going to, even monuments are considered an attraction. It's interesting to note that the case of the amount of points of interest in the city of Paris, almost 3/4, so almost 75% are food and beverage related. Definitely a foodie city. You know, it's always hyped up, I think, to be kind of known for its food. And I think this just goes to show in the offer. However, it's interesting to note that the sentiment is actually the highest for attractions. This is something that we tend to see. Hospitality usually doesn't do as great, just because that's typically where complaints will come in more, whether it's price related, it's also kind of into cost, maybe internet connectivity. So we'll kind of dive into that in a second. So essentially, as I was mentioning, within the sentiment, what people have to say. So a lot of people say, okay, this is just a number out of 100. What's that context? So we really want to dive in to do essentially a semantic analysis, looking at all these online reviews, social posts, these digital traces about each and every one of these points of interest. So specifically for short-term rentals, we found a lot of people love the position, the location. That's something that's really important for them, and the values there. However, where they're not really finding the value is within the equipment. When we digged on that, it really went into equipment within different rooms, within the kitchen. Maybe it just wasn't well equipped in terms of the offers that were there. Also the cost, there were kind of some complaints popping up in terms of the cost to value. And lastly, the internet. That's something that was a common kind of complaint, was that, you know, it was a great location, really positioned well. The host was really friendly, responsive, but the Wi-Fi didn't work. So that's something I think a lot of these kind of short-term rental owners, even within the hospitality industry, can take note of, to kind of jump on that beforehand so they can avoid these complaints and have even a better experience for their guests. Kind of looking at the geospatially, we wanted to understand kind of where in the city people kind of had the best or the worst experience. So when looking at the various arrondissements in the city, we found these are the top 5. The first is the 7th, with a very high sentiment score, almost 90%, which is very high, 88.6, followed by the 3rd and the 5th. So these are essentially the areas in the city that people will be kind of having that best experience at. So essentially, what can you do with this data? So again, as I was mentioning, understanding the complaints historically in the past enables business owners, whether that's at a restaurant, at a short-term rental, at a hotel, even at a local museum, to take targeted action and enhance that guest experience. Also, by pinpointing your competitive advantage, it can help you kind of surpass competitors. And then again, going back to the marketing value, when you really understand that kind of these touch points, these pain points of guests, of visitors, you can really create promotional messaging that's a lot more targeted and on brand and kind of speaking that same language to your visitors. So lastly, if we can ask for your participation one more time, we have another poll. So we're curious to know what everyone thinks the top attraction in terms of sentiment score is in the city of Paris. So we'll bring that up in just a second. Ashley, what do you think?
I don't know. The Eiffel Tower, is that?
I thought it was the Eiffel Tower too. But when I was creating this, I was like, it's gonna be the Eiffel Tower. I mean, that is Paris.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think of when I first think about it, you know?
All right. We have almost 50% right now, so 48% also think it's the Eiffel Tower. So we're not alone, Ashley. 31 think it's the Louvre, 10 the Orsay Museum, and 10 the Arc de Triomphe. So let's have a look. It's actually the Orsay Museum. So this is the highest attraction in terms of sentiment. However, it's interesting to note the highest attraction in terms of the amount of reviews is the Arc de Triomphe. So of course, the sentiment scores are quite similar. The Musée d'Orsay leaks just a little bit ahead, but it's crazy to look at the amount of reviews. It's almost 3 times more for the Arc de Triomphe. And then, of course, is in the silver medal we can't ignore is the Sacré-Cœur in Montmartre. But I was shocked the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre did not even make the top 3. So
Yeah.
really interesting to know, and maybe that's just kind of our perception as travelers, but where visitors from other countries are going, kind of, and what really speaks to them, and again, what has them leaving a review to talk about their experience. So meanwhile, looking at hotels, we also looked at the top 3 hotels that will be the busiest this summer. You can see there is a little bit of a discrepancy, however, between that arrondissement. So the top 3 hotels were not in the top 3 locations, which has a lot to do again with prices, which we'll look at in just a second, just because a lot of people want to be near some of these kind of those areas that they like, but again, they want to kind of balance that experience with, again, that cost to value. And then lastly, the top restaurants, similar trends, none of them are in the 7th. So again, there's a couple nearby, not too far, but a lot of people are not staying where they're having the best experience, because those tend to be more expensive areas, because they're closer to some of these top attractions. We do find it interesting to note that the top 2 restaurants in the city of Paris are actually Italian. So our company is based in Italy, so we definitely get a kick out of that. So again, kind of lastly, just to take a step back from the data, what can you do with this information? So of course, for social media, it's huge. So understanding the preferences, the most visited areas. Again, maybe the city of Paris thought that, yes, the Eiffel Tower, this is you know, our symbol. We're going to always use this in our promotional marketing. Maybe the Orsay Museum kind of was something that, again, it's a popular place, no doubt, but using that in messaging might even attract a different wave of travelers, maybe those focusing more on history, more on art, to really kind of improve that destination visibility. And then also in terms of sustainability, which is another really big topic. So essentially, how can we get people dispersed within a city and highlighting top attractions kind of all throughout the area instead of just having these really overcrowded areas in just a few places. We really appreciate everyone's time. We'll show kind of some real examples of the platform that includes both of our data. First, we invite everyone, if you want to download the full report, we updated it today, so we'll have all the most recent data. We'll also send it via email after the webinar, so everyone will get that. But we also wanted to share with everyone kind of where this data came from to put it into context. So this is the platform that the information came from. It's called DAI Destinations. It's our all-in-one destination analysis platform that includes both data fields data as well as our partners with PredictHQ. This is where the information essentially for the hospitality that's updated each day in real time. We found it really interesting today when we were looking, we did see maximum prices go up a little bit with a big difference between, again, this traditional accommodation property, which is quite a bit more than that maximum rate for short-term rentals. However, the average prices for short-term rentals are a smidge higher. This is typically because they offer, you know, more facilities. So they might have a kitchen, or maybe a balcony where the hotel might just have that kind of the bedroom bathroom set up. Also, in terms of prices, again, we were kind of spot on with understanding prices right now are really high within the 7th and 8th arrondissement, which is where some of these top attractions were. However, a lot of people are staying kind of outside of these areas just to avoid those prices. You can see the difference between the 19th, 20th and the 7th, 8th, it's double. So people can definitely save a little bit money staying outside of kind of the city center and this historical area. Lastly, we also kind of had some fun playing with the sentiment score and the analysis based on the language. So we compared the sentiment of people writing their reviews and comments in French versus English. So it's interesting to note, on the right-hand side, you can see this is the sentiment from French speakers. It's actually higher for English speakers. So even though tourists are shelling out a lot more money to come, they do have a much higher sentiment score. However, the trends are quite similar. What's the biggest difference is kind of within their pain points and their experience. You can see here, these are the most discussed topics. Within the French-speaking market, their biggest complaint was really only related to the organization. Versus when you go into the English, you can see there's two here. Again, some relating to the organization, also some relating to safety. So again, these are things to keep into consideration when creating campaigns that, you know, Paris is a really safe city, to get people to feel comfortable traveling there. And again, when you have more kind of security on the ground, you're able to understand the various pinpoints and pain points of all your visitors. So if anyone has any questions, we'll definitely take a Q&A. We have some time left. So please ask any questions. Ashley, anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, I'm super glad that we were able to be a part of the webinar. I think we're going to see a lot of impact from these Olympics. And I think tourism destinations can really prepare for the 2024 Olympics surge by leveraging the demand insights, you know, optimizing their operations and staffing and inventory.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of dynamics. I think things will probably only change as we get closer. So definitely stay tuned. We'll launch another report, kind of updating everything to see how the situation changes. We have one question about the slides. So the slides will be sent via email to everyone registered. We can also share the QR code here to download. Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you, everyone. Again, I'll leave mine and Ashley's contact information here. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, via email. I think we're probably the only two people with our names. They're quite unique, so feel free to reach out to us. We really appreciate everyone joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
All right. If there's no other questions, we can hop off.